History Midterm Shortened Review Sheet. Berger Review Sheet. What caused the modern era? Progress, moving forward, development of new ideas, growth. Enlightenment, 17th to 18th century intellectual movement, emphasizing reason and individualism over tradition. Scientific revolution, applied scientific method to all aspects of life. Inspired new technology and ideas of human freedom. Focused on natural, not supernatural, causes. John Locke advocated natural rights, life, liberty, property, and a contractual relationship between ruler and subjects. Benjamin Franklin, ideal Enlightenment figure, self-made and self-educated. Enlightenment ideas reached American colonies. Demographic changes, 1720 to 1760. British North American population grew from 472,000 to 1.6 million. Immigrants, Germans, Scots-Irish, and increased slave trade fueled growth. Political changes. 1763, end of 7 Years' War/French and Indian War marked Britain as a global power dominating North America. Rivalry between European powers. Religious revival, the Great Awakening, 1730 to 1740. George Whitefield, preacher touring the colonies, called for personal relationships with God and rebirth in faith. Resulted in rejection of old church authorities, new divinity schools, Brown, Princeton, and sowed seeds of revolt. Early Industrial Revolution. Began in Britain, textile industry, increased mass production in factories. Impacted colonies by pushing cheap British goods onto them, mercantilism, increasing the desire for economic independence. The Jewish question in 1763. Jews spread across Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas. Shifted from corporatism, groups, to citizenship. Restrictions on Jews, lived in ghettos, limited jobs, e.g., moneylending, wore distinctive clothing, paid special taxes. Kahal functions, Jewish self-governing bodies collected taxes, ran synagogues and schools, enforced religious standards, and managed legal matters, Beit Din. New challenges and tensions in America. Pre-1763, British colonies governed by salutary neglect, loosely enforced policies. The French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763, began over land disputes in the Ohio Valley. Albany Congress, 1754 met to unify tax collection for defense. Benjamin Franklin's Albany Plan aimed to unite the colonies but failed due to resistance to self-taxation. Consequences: Britain's victory in the war led to more settlers in the Ohio Valley, disrupting Native American lands. Pontiac's Rebellion, 1763 Native American resistance to British forts, led to the Proclamation of 1763, banning colonial settlement west of the Appalachians. Britain's financial crisis, war debt led to new taxes on colonies. 1764 Sugar Act, reduced tax but enforced stricter smuggling regulations. 1765 Stamp Act, direct tax on paper goods led to mass protests, formation of Sons of Liberty, and the Stamp Act, Congress issuing the Declaration of Rights and Grievances. The act was repealed in 1766. 1766 Quartering Act required colonies to house British troops. 1766 Declaratory Act reaffirmed Britain's right to tax the colonies. Townshend Acts, 1767 taxes on imports, glass, lead, paint, tea. Increased enforcement through new courts and searches. Colonial boycott, spread resistance, increased local production. Daughters of Liberty spun goods at home. Liberty Affair, 1768 seizure of John Hancock's ship led to riots and the stationing of British troops in Boston. Escalating conflict. Boston Massacre, 1770 clash between British soldiers and colonists killed 5, became a rallying point for revolution. Boston Tea Party, 1773 colonists dumped tea into Boston Harbor in protest of the Tea Act, which favored the British East India Company. Intolerable Acts, 1774 punitive laws in response, included closing Boston Harbor and placing Boston under martial law, General Thomas Gage. Unified colonies, leading to the First Continental Congress. American Revolution. First Continental Congress, 1774 organized boycott of British goods, met again if grievances were ignored. February 1775, Britain declared Massachusetts in rebellion, sent more troops to Boston. Minutemen prepared for battle. Battles of Lexington and Concord, April 1775. British mission to seize colonial arms, foiled by Paul Revere's warning, resulting in a clash, shot heard round the world. British suffered 273 casualties, colonists 95. Second Continental Congress, May 1775. Debated reconciliation or rebellion, raised a Continental Army under George Washington. Battle of Bunker Hill, June 1775. British won but suffered heavy losses. Steps toward independence. Olive Branch Petition, July 1775. Last attempt at reconciliation with Britain, rejected. Common Sense, January 1776. Thomas Paine's pamphlet argued for independence, widely influential. Declaration of Independence, 1776. Drafted during the Second Continental Congress, formally declared separation from Britain. An independent nation, Articles of Confederation. Key question: did the revolution give too much power to the average person? Was the revolution too revolutionary or not enough? Life, liberty, and authority. Unequal rights for women, African Americans, and working class. Women, despite participating in boycotts and groups like Daughters of Liberty, gained no political rights. New Jersey briefly allowed property-owning women to vote. African Americans. Northern states wanted to emancipate slaves. Pennsylvania, gradual emancipation, 1780. Massachusetts, immediate emancipation, 1781. Working class. Lowering property requirements for voting after the Revolution alarmed elites. John Adams warned against it. State governments. Written constitutions with bills of rights, 8 states. Weak governors, strong bicameral legislatures. Articles of Confederation, 1781 to 1789. Single House Congress, 1 vote per state. No executive or judicial branches. Congress could conduct war, manage foreign relations, and issue money but could not regulate trade, draft troops, or create taxes. Successes. 1. Ended the Revolutionary War. 2. Managed land through Land Ordinance of 1785, organized land into 6-mile townships, with sections for public schools and government. Northwest Ordinance of 1787 established a clear process for territories to become states, including stages of governance and population requirements. Failures. Economic depression, heavy debts, worthless currency, and uprisings like Shays's Rebellion. Constitutional Convention, 1787. Called to address Article's weaknesses. Delegates included Washington, Madison, Hamilton, and Franklin. Key debates and compromises. 1. Big versus small states. Bigger states wanted more, say smaller states wanted equal solution. Great Compromise, bicameral legislature, Senate, 2 per state, and House of Representatives, by population. 2. North versus South on slavery. 3/5 Compromise, slaves counted as 3/5 for representation and taxation. 3. Strong central government versus states' rights. Federalism, divided power between national and state governments. National powers, foreign affairs, defense, interstate trade, currency. State powers, education, marriage laws, intrastate trade. 4. Electing the president. Created the Electoral College. 5. U.S. Constitution. 7 articles define government structure and functions. Amendments ensure adaptability, currently 27. Legislative branch. Senate, 30-plus years old, 6-year terms, 2/state. House of Representatives, 25-plus years old, 2-year terms, based on population. Powers, taxation, military, creating laws. Executive branch. President chosen by the Electoral College, 270/538 votes needed. Powers, Commander-in-Chief, foreign policy, appoint judges, enforce laws. Judicial branch. The Supreme Court oversees the federal judiciary. Congress establishes lower courts. Amendment process. 9 of 13 states needed to ratify the Constitution. Ratification completed after 2.5 years. Federalists versus Anti-Federalists. Federalists supported a strong central government, no Bill of Rights. Anti-Federalists advocated for stronger state governments and a Bill of Rights. French Revolution, 1789. Causes: 1. Economic decline, taxation on peasants, bread shortages, government debt. 2. Enlightenment ideals challenged monarchy. 3. Influence of the American Revolution. Estates. 1. First estate, clergy, less than 1% of the population, exempt from taxes, with wealth concentrated among higher clergy. 2. Second estate, nobility, about 2% of the population, also tax exempt, with privileges like land ownership and feudal rights. 3. Third estate, everyone else, 97% of the population, including wealthy bourgeoisie and poor peasants, burdened by heavy taxes and without political power. Events: National Assembly, 1789, formed by the Third Estate, vowed constitutional reform, Tennis Court Oath. Storming of the Bastille prison, July 14, 1789, symbolized the collapse of royal authority. Great fear, peasants revolted, destroying noble property. Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, asserted equality, freedom of speech, religion, and property rights. Reforms/changes: Limited monarchy, legislative assembly, end of feudalism, and religious freedom. Political spectrum in the legislative assembly. Radical, favors extreme changes in government policy, no monarch republic. Liberal, favors some changes in government policy. Moderate, open to minor changes in policy. Conservative, favors maintaining the status quo, same limited monarchy. Reactionary, favors a return to post-traditional policy. French Revolutionary Wars. June 1791, Louis XVI attempted to flee France with his family to the Austrian Netherlands, where his brother-in-law, Leopold II, was king. Declaration of Pillnitz, August 1791. Prussia and Austria issued vague but severe threats of consequences if any harm came to the royal family. April 20, 1792, France declared war on Austria, and Prussia soon joined. Brunswick Manifesto, July 25, 1792. Prussia threatened to destroy Paris if the revolutionaries harmed any member of the royal family. Storming of the Tuileries Palace. August 10, 1792, insurgents and revolutionaries in Paris attacked the Tuileries Palace. The guards protecting the king were massacred, and the royal family became prisoners. Radical Jacobins in the Legislative Assembly, along with growing discontent over King Louis XVI's actions and militia activity, pushed the assembly to suspend the monarchy. September massacres. September 1792, rumors spread that Parisian prisoners planned to escape and help Prussia take over France. A Jacobin leader ordered the execution of prisoners, including nobles and priests suspected of opposing the revolution. Over 5 days, more than 1,000 prisoners were killed. The sans-culottes, working-class revolutionaries frustrated with wealthier revolutionaries, carried out most of the violence. French Revolutionary Wars. September 20, 1792, the French army won the Battle of Valmy, halting the Prussian advance on Paris and saving the French Revolution. The victory symbolized the success of a citizen army motivated by liberty and nationalism. Thousands of volunteers joined, singing La Marseillaise, the new national anthem. Refrain: grab your weapons, citizens. Form your battalions. Let us march. Let us march. May impure blood water our fields. National Convention. On the same day as Valmy, the Legislative Assembly transferred power to the National Convention, which assumed both legislative and executive authority. The convention instituted universal male suffrage and proclaimed the French Republic. The Jacobins, from the radical Third Estate, dominated the convention and were tasked with drafting a new constitution. Execution of Louis XVI. The Montagnards, the most radical faction of the Jacobins, led the trial of Louis XVI. Despite opposition from Girondists, the king was found guilty and executed on January 21, 1793. French Constitution of 1793. Adopted in June and ratified in August, the new constitution established the First French Republic. Growing discontent with the revolution. 1793 Vade uprisings, sans-culottes demanded lower bread prices. Following Louis XVI's execution, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, and England joined the French Revolutionary Wars. June 2, 1793, the Montagnards, backed by sans-culotte mobs, staged a coup. Reign of Terror. The Committee of Public Safety, led by Maximilien Robespierre, was charged with addressing radical movements, food shortages, riots, revolts, and military defeats. Thousands of people were executed in the bloodiest phase of the revolution. De-Christianization. Churches were closed and replaced with the cult of reason. The revolutionary calendar replaced the traditional one, with 10-day weeks and no Sundays or religious holidays. Social changes. Radical equality was emphasized, Vous was replaced with Tu, and playing cards featured revolutionary ideals instead of monarchy symbols. Nationalism. The Committee of Public Safety used propaganda and censorship to promote devotion to France and the revolution. Patrie, love of the homeland, was framed as a public religion, encouraging all citizens to devote themselves to revolutionary ideals. Levy en masse. Introduced the first general conscription, requiring all citizens to contribute to the war effort. A planned economy controlled production and set price controls. Thermidorian reaction. Robespierre's execution marked the start of a moderate period. The Jacobin clubs were closed, the Committee of Public Safety's power was reduced, and amnesty was granted to many previously persecuted individuals. Reactionary period and the Directory. 1785 to 1799, France was governed by the Directory, a five-leader system with a two-part legislature designed to prevent excessive power in one person's hands. Political chaos, economic struggles, wars with European nations, and dissatisfaction among royalists and radicals characterized this period. Social inequality and economic hardships persisted, paving the way for Napoleon's rise to power. Haitian Revolution. Saint-Domingue, Haiti, the richest French colony, producing sugar, coffee, and indigo through enslaved labor. 1791 Slave Revolt, inspired by the Declaration of the Rights of Man, enslaved Africans staged a rebellion. Leaders included Toussaint Louverture, a former slave who led multiple military victories. The rebellion became a civil war, with conflicts among royalists, republicans, free people of color, and rebelling slaves. 1801, Louverture abolished slavery, conquered Santo Domingo, and declared himself governor-general for life. 1802. Napoleon sent an army to reconquer Haiti and reinstate slavery, resulting in massive French casualties. 50,000 of 58,000 soldiers died. Louverture was captured and died in prison. 1804, Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Alexander Pétion declared Haiti's independence. Jews in France. Background: wealthy Sephardic Jews in Bordeaux and Paris were relatively accepted, while poorer Jews in Alsace-Lorraine faced extortion and bans from towns. Enlightenment: debates about Jewish integration led to the abolition of the poll tax, 1785, and the eventual granting of full rights to Jews in September 27, 1791. Federalist era. The United States in 1790. Population: nearly 4 million, with 90% living on farms. Few large towns, the economy struggled with public debt and heavy circulation of state and national currencies. Executive branch. 1789, George Washington unanimously elected president via the Electoral College, John Adams sworn in as vice president. Washington shaped the executive branch by establishing a cabinet. Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson. Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. Secretary of War, Henry Knox. Attorney General, Edmund Randolph. Judicial branch. Judiciary Act of 1789. Established a Supreme Court with one Chief Justice and 5 Associate Justices. Created federal district and circuit courts. Allowed state court decisions to be appealed to federal courts when constitutional issues arose. Attorney General role defined: prosecute cases in the Supreme Court and advise the President on legal matters. U.S. Census. Conducted in 1790 to apportion representation in the House of Representatives and determine tax obligations. Directed by Thomas Jefferson as Secretary of State. Alexander Hamilton's financial plan. Financial crisis. The government incurred massive debt during the revolution. State IOUs were viewed as worthless due to the government's inability to repay debts. Solutions. 1. Public credit. Federal government would assume state debts at full value and issue new securities, bonds. 2. Tariffs. Proposed protectionist policies, including the tariff of 1789, 5% tax on imports, to protect American industries and generate revenue. 3. National bank. Proposed a federally funded bank to issue currency and stabilize the economy. The elastic clause was cited to justify the bank's constitutionality under necessary and proper powers. Passage of debt plan. Hamilton's debt bill passed in 1790 with a compromise. The national capital was established between Maryland and Virginia, Washington, D.C. Two-party system. By 1792, ideological differences between Hamilton, Federalist, and Jefferson, Democratic-Republican, led to the formation of political parties. Federalists supported a strong central government and a loose interpretation of the Constitution. Democratic Republicans advocated for states' rights and a strict interpretation of the Constitution. Whiskey Rebellion. 1794. Farmers in western Pennsylvania rebelled against a federal excise tax on whiskey. Protesters used violence, including tar and feathering tax collectors. Washington deployed 13,000 troops to suppress the uprising, demonstrating federal authority under the Constitution. Foreign policy and neutrality. French Revolution. Democratic Republicans supported revolutionary France, while Federalists feared the mob violence. Neutrality Proclamation of 1793 declared U.S. neutrality in the war between Britain and France. Genet Affair, 1793. French Ambassador Edmond Genet bypassed diplomatic protocols to recruit Americans to fight against Britain. Washington demanded his removal. Genet sought asylum when his political faction in France was overthrown. Tensions with Britain. Britain violated the Treaty of Paris, 1783, by maintaining forts on U.S. soil and arming Native Americans. British naval forces seized American ships and impressed sailors. Jay's Treaty, 1794. Britain agreed to vacate forts and allowed limited U.S. trade with the British West Indies. Treaty was unpopular but preserved peace between the two nations. Spain and Pinckney's Treaty, 1795. Spain, weakened by its defeat in the French Revolutionary Wars, sought peace with the U.S. Gave up claims to land east of the Mississippi, except Florida. Opened the Mississippi River to trade for U.S. and Spanish citizens. Allowed U.S. traders access to New Orleans. Washington's Farewell Address, 1796. Warned against political parties and foreign alliances.